All right, what's happening, everyone? Um, Happy New Year. Happy 2024. Let's make this a freaking awesome year. We had 2023 flew by so fast, and especially for me, it feels like it was just yesterday that we were January 1st, 2023, and so much has happened over 12 months. So many big life changes I know for myself and also for a few people that I know. So it was an interesting year and it was a fun year, but let's make 2024 even better. It's freaking kill it. And here we're going to start on the 18th mile with an episode where I had a chat with a great mate of mine, Kurt Green. And so we go over our experience of the Dallas Marathon in terms of just training for the event, how we came about doing it, our experience during the event, and then we also chatted a little bit at the end about his half marathon or half Ironman, sorry, and how he found that in terms of comparing it to the marathon in terms of the actual event, as well as his training towards the Ironman. And then we also chat a little bit about what he's planning on doing next in terms of just his personal training and growth, fitness wise. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode and you get something out of it and maybe a little bit of insight about a marathon that you didn't know before. And yeah, let me know what you think and enjoy. Cheers. All right, welcome, Kurt. Welcome to the 18th mile. Um, like I told you before, excited to have you here and just casually chat through our experience with Dallas and just I guess a common interest in personal fitness in a way. So hopefully everyone who hears this enjoys it. And I'll just start with kind of in a way introducing how I know you, and then you can give more details and color to that right afterwards. And so for everyone out there, I know Kurt through with my time back at OU. We were in the same fraternity, which I joined my freshman year, and then in a way, we just kept contact throughout all of that, and then we both happened to move down to Dallas, and he is one of my few friends who actually wanted to do stuff like marathons, and so I think that's I would say that probably strengthened our friendship a lot more is because of doing that, and so but it's been about 6 years or 7 years we've known each other now, so it's been a while. But yeah, just if you wouldn't mind just giving a little bit of background about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and just yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up in Massachusetts, Kingston, Massachusetts to be exact. Kind of found my way to OU just via my dad. He went to OU back in the 60s and 70s. So whenever I was looking at schools, obviously wanted to find a good civil engineering program, which is what I do now. And then also wanted to find a good atmosphere to flourish and just expand my social network. So going into a place that I didn't know anybody, OU seemed like a good spot to obviously get to know a lot of people very quickly, living in the dorms and everything like that. Fitness wise, when I was in high school, I was a runner, did soccer. So obviously you're running up and down the pitch, and then did cross country, did indoor and outdoor track. Being in Massachusetts in the wintertime, you got to do it indoors because it's too damn cold to do it outside. So that was
Yep.
kind of my intro to running. And then I would say got interested in the marathon itself kind of back in 2020 during COVID. Obviously, it was a little bit crazy times for everybody, especially at school as well. And fitness was one of the main things that a lot of people focused on. So my sister actually floated the idea out in 2020 of, hey, let's do a running challenge where you have to run a mile and a half every day for 5 out of 7 days a week under, at first it was 20 minutes. And the incentive here is everybody put in $20. And so from that, you had a pool. I think we had about 20 people. So last man standing is the idea of, okay, whoever can go the longest while doing this running challenge will win the pot of money at the end. So that was a little bit of incentive, but also just to get outside and go run and be active. Well, we're stuck inside and supposed to be quarantining and everything like that. So through that, that kind of jump started my love for running again. And then I don't know exactly when we had the conversation about doing the marathon. I think it might have been,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, whenever you moved to Dallas and we met up a few times and we both love
Yeah.
Nick Bear, kind of seeing the
Yeah.
things that he was doing and being involved with, we wanted to get into that a little bit. So I don't know if you want to expand on your interest in the marathons and your running history as well. I don't know if you've done that before on the show or not.
No, not really. But I will say, I remember the moment you floated the idea of the marathon. We were at because it was funny to me how it started. We were at the village with Sam, and we
Mm.
were just it was like we were drinking beer, and about like 6 or 7 beers in, you were like, "Do you want to do the Dallas Marathon?" And I was like, "Well, might as well." And we just texted like a few. I think we texted a few days after that, and we are like, "Are we actually going to do this?" And you're like, "Yeah, might as well." And so I guess from there we just never looked back. So it's funny how it just like after a few beers we um, just started from there. But yeah, my I never ran a lot because like in high school I played cricket and rugby, so all my fitness was related to very quick movements or no endurance sports. And in college I'd run on and off. I remember like whenever we lived at the villages, you'd always be running laps in there, and I would I would honestly be impressed just because I hated running and never did any of that. And then my main running really just started when you asked me to do that because I was forced to run, I guess, if I wanted to do a race. And you mentioned Nick, and I remember one time he was talking and he said that he, in order to become better at something, he'd do like a challenge. And so he said if you want to become a better runner, for example, you sign up for a marathon because you have to train for it, or if you want to be a better weightlifter, you sign up for like a powerlifting competition or a bodybuilding competition, something like that. So really, I just started um, essentially when we started training Dallas, and so since then I've kind of tried to keep some baseline of fitness in terms of running, and so that's just not as long in running as you are, but I'm actually glad we did that because I do enjoy it a lot now as a alternate way of fitness, I guess.
Yeah, definitely
But
having a race scheduled will push you to actually start the training, get involved, get your nutrition right, get all the necessary things you need for race day in line, like
mm-hmm.
even figuring out what plan are we going to follow for the marathon itself. And I remember it because we started it on August 17th was the first day of our marathon prep.
Yeah,
So
yeah, like
that was kind of that was kind of a big wake up call. Before that, I was just working out at my office gym, maybe running here
mm-hmm.
and there, not doing anything too crazy, just doing push pull legs, take a day off, push pull legs. Didn't really have any goal in mind, just kind of wanted to up my general fitness and muscularity. But then started doing the marathon training. It's like, okay, I need to run. And the general schedule for our marathon training was you have a chill run on Monday, Tuesday, say 3 to 4 miles.
Yep.
Wednesday would be our tempo work at Germany
Mm-hmm.
Park, which was really nice to meet up with you, obviously, every Wednesday morning throughout that time
5
period.
a.m. or like 6 a.m.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was good. That was a good
yeah,
time. And
yeah.
then obviously Thursdays, Fridays, again, a little bit more chill run, 3 to 4 miles, nothing too crazy. Saturday was a rest
Mm-hmm.
day, and then was our longer runs, which could be anywhere from 8 to 10 to 20, 22 miles at the peak before we started
Right.
tapering down. So using that general schedule was really helpful for me because, like, all right, I know that if I still want to keep up my social events and go out on a Thursday night for a happy hour, okay, I still have a 3 to 4 mile run I need to bang out on Friday, whether that's before work or after work, and I get off at about
Mm-hmm.
30 on Fridays. So super easy for me to dip out after 12:30, go for a run, whether the
Mm-hmm.
weather is 50 degrees in Dallas or it got down to I think 30s, 40s whenever we were doing the tempo runs in the morning. So it got a little chilly.
Yeah, yeah. Get a little
But then
cold.
training, even training in August and September when it was 100 degrees, it was a major switch from super hot training, which I think really helps your body get just used to running that way whenever you have those cooler temperatures. It's a lot
Yeah,
easier for your to regulate its own temperature, and it's a lot of fun. Good time.
yeah, yeah. What would you say was the most surprised surprising thing about training for you? Because, like you said, for me, again that schedule helped a ton. Um, but I didn't realize how much. Like my biggest surprise was seeing just how much we'd improve. And I think I told you this at some point during it. Like one of the tempo runs we did in like week 11 or 12 or something, I was like, oh, this is so much easier now, being able to run at X pace for 6 miles, whereas in week one we were barely struggling. um, running 8 miles or 10 miles, you know. And so just seeing that
Yeah.
progression was such a shock to me because I'd never done anything like it.
Yeah, definitely seeing how your just cardio fitness in general can get ramped up so fast and how quickly you can fall off of it because the training you put into it, obviously in August, early September, we were just getting into it and
Hmm.
we were a little bit slower. But then October, November, obviously, like you're saying, we had those 10, 12 mile tempo runs where we can keep those paces and we're not scrounging for breath. We're not going immediately to our water bottles because we're dehydrated. We know how to kind of pace ourselves in terms of hydration, in terms of, okay, can we actually attain these miles at this time? I think one of the two things for me, one, I was living with my aunt and uncle at the time. So trying to get them on board with, hey, this is what my schedule is going to look like. Sorry if it's out of the norm, if I wake you guys up in the morning, trying to be more courteous to them, but also at the same time, eating enough food, which has been one of my main problems in my life. Probably like I'm not a big guy. I'm about 166 pounds right now. During the marathon training,
Hmm.
just get enough calories in order to suffice all my training. That was a huge thing for me. So lots of pasta, chicken, rice, just basically eating as much as I could was one of the main challenges for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. It is also hard. I find sometimes after a big training session, you're just not hungry and you
Hmm.
just don't want to eat. I don't know if you ever had that, but then you kind of force yourself. Like I'd force myself to eat like a family-sized lasagna after our long runs, just so I could get some food in. And
Yeah.
that was probably that, and like some of the like you said, you had to like plan your social life. So I remember there was some workouts where like one Wednesday I showed up after some office happy hour, ended at 1 a.m. and we had to show up at like 5 a.m. Those are probably some of the worst times of
Yep.
training, of just if you don't plan properly or if you have to force feed yourself stuff. Um, I don't know. So there's just, it really, like you mentioned, it's that schedule and then training for something kind of improves other areas of your life as well because you have to be disciplined in a way. I don't know if you found that where, like, I found myself being more productive in other areas because I knew, hey, tomorrow morning I have to be up at 4:30 or 5 a.m. because we have to do a run, and I can't skip out because I'm not going to do it after work. That's a fact. Or if I skip Wednesday, then I fall behind all my other days. You know.
Hmm. And I think that was another
So.
big thing is having you as an accountability partner of like, hey, this person's doing the same exact training. And
Hmm.
sometimes miss a few miles. Like I had a trip where I went to Chicago and went to Madison, Wisconsin. And while I was there, I did all my miles. But then me and the guys that I went with, we came back on Sunday. And I think we had a 18-mile run. So we got back. I mean, we had a weekend of cheese curds and beer. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to
Right.
push myself on Sunday to get to this run. So I did it on Monday. So I did an 18-mile run. And unfortunately,
Hmm.
it rained on that Monday. So hey, you missed that run on Sunday. Well, guess what? Now you get to run 18 in the rain. So
Yeah.
that was definitely a big thing. You need to have that dedication and willingness just to keep going through the entire training program. I would definitely tell people, hey, follow program, print it out, go day by day, check off each single thing that you do, make sure you keep an actual pace. Well, you can keep track of the paces based on what they tell you to follow. Like, hey, do a 12-mile run at 10-minute pace, but I would on the side maybe write, okay, I did 10 miles and this was my actual pace. And I would say the majority of the time my paces were a little bit quicker than what the actual scheduled pace was, just because
Hmm.
you get excited in those first few miles, or maybe you're feeling it after 4 to 6 miles, which is typically where the runner's high, or maybe your autopilot kind of comes in to where you're at a comfortable pace and you can keep it for the rest of the run. So I would definitely encourage
Yeah.
people to print some kind of schedule if you're training for a half, a full marathon, or anything else like half Ironman, full Ironman, anything else with a genuine goal that's going to be a hard endurance race. I would definitely print something out.
Yeah. Yeah. I did that as well. I mean, I'm very electronic. I typically don't print out stuff, but just seeing the tick marks like day after day of us like checking them off was a major win. And I guess I wonder about this. Do you think would have been different if we didn't have each other's accountability partners? Because I know there'd be some workouts where I just like I'm like I have to text Kurt. I have no excuse in not doing this. And so I feel like some
Yeah.
of them, if I didn't have you or let's say any other challenge like this or goal that forces you to do that, it's like a lifting part and it forces you to do that extra thing that you usually wouldn't do.
Yeah, and I mean also spreading the word to people like, hey, I'm doing this thing and just putting it out in the open. Like all the people that I work with, at first I kept it quiet because I'm like, oh man, if I don't attain my goals, I don't want to seem like a failure to them. But then I was like, I'm gonna do this thing. Like I'm gonna get this. And
Hmm.
so I would tell everybody, and having that is like, all right, well now everybody knows. So they know my time that I'm aiming for. They know what I'm gonna do. So now that's another point of accountability, which is huge. So I would definitely tell people, no matter if they're the ones doing the training with you, and you're definitely going to get your naysayers. Like there was a guy on my team that I worked with, and his dad did marathons. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm aiming for a sub 4. And he said, oh, is this your first marathon? I was like, yeah, I've never done one before. Just going to go and see if I can't knock out a sub
Hmm.
4, do this training plan and try to get there. He said, oh, my dad did a 5:30 first, and he did a 5, and then he didn't get a sub 4 until his like fourth marathon. I'm like, okay, well, getting that negative energy a little bit maybe
Yeah.
pushes you harder, honestly, in those training sessions to, hey, I need to get this pace down. I need to go beyond what the pace is calling for. Obviously, don't hurt yourself and push yourself too far, but
Right.
definitely add a little bit of fuel to the fire. It was nice.
Yeah. I feel like I know we sub four might have been optimistic to start off with, which I mean we crushed it and we killed it anyway. But I sort of feel
Yeah.
like if we just did, uh, we just try to do the race with no goal in mind, I feel halfway through we would have both just dropped out. On that's just because if I have no goal, I just see no point in chasing anything. I don't know if you feel the same way about stuff, but if we went in there and just said, "Oh, we're just gonna finish this race," I would have lost interest after like 3 weeks of training.
Yeah, and I think that translates well to life too, in terms of your just financial life, in terms of your work life. You need to have those goals going into different years. I know we're right around the corner from 2024, so setting goals for
Hmm.
next year is on my mind, and setting goals for the next 5 years has been on my mind as well. So getting all those things in line will definitely propel you further, and having something to work for that's concrete that you can actually attain. And again, be realistic with your expectations. And again, sub 4 might have
Right.
been a little bit of a stretch, but we did get it done. I don't know if we want to talk about the actual marathon day of and scheduling, how we kind of handled nutrition, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we can move into that because I was that was kind of on my mind for the next thing is just I guess like I'll start with just an overall view of timeline is what we met up at. We started at 8:30, I think, and so we met up. You and your sister and her boyfriend were staying in an Airbnb right by the starting line, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we met up there at was it 7:30? What was it was pretty early.
7:30.
Yeah, yeah. And so we met up in the Airbnb, kind of chilled for like a couple 30 minutes or so. Um, and then we made our way down to the starting line to start lining up because we were in a corral that was a little bit later on. Um, and then I guess for me that morning, nutrition was getting a coffee and clearing the system. I think I ate some oats and some banana. Obviously, the coffee didn't help because we had a pit stop at mile 9. I don't know if you remember that, but
Yep.
so that was the goal. But so I had a coffee and some nutrition, and then filled up my water bottle with some G1M, VPN's G1M Sport, and loaded up the goos. I think we had about 5 goos for the race, and so I just made sure everything of that was my nutrition really for the race day. Um, and so that was my morning in a way leading up to the races, filling that up, eating, meeting up with you guys. I don't know if you wanted to walk through yours as well. Yours worked
Yes.
out better than mine, so.
So starting out the night before, obviously people talk about carving up, and honestly, looking back now, one of the things I would do differently is maybe start carving up 3 to 4 days in advance. So
Mhm.
getting
Yeah, I feel like
into
Thursday.
yeah, so
Yeah.
your body's not pushing itself too hard. Like I had a bunch of pasta and chicken the night before, which was great. It helped me jumpstart my carbs and everything like that. But at the same
Hmm.
time, going back 3 to 4 days previous, probably didn't eat as much as I needed to. So that's the first point of things I would do differently. Uh, then the morning of, had coffee, had progress and had success with that. So that was nice. Had a
Yep. Yeah.
banana, nothing too crazy. I really throughout the training didn't eat a lot of food. Pre-run, it'd be a banana, sometimes maybe I don't know a Cliff Bar or something else similar to that, maybe some
Mm-hmm.
oats. Nothing too crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So morning of, obviously, yes, met up in the corral, had our goose, had the G1M. Didn't really have anything else in terms of nutrition the morning of. And like you said, we got to a corral that was maybe a little bit behind where we probably should have been. We were probably with the 4:45, 5 hour crowd, which we should have
Yep.
been up with the sub 4 crowd because that would have helped in terms of the actual race start. Because
Yeah, because we had
obviously,
to
when,
weave through a bunch of people at the start.
Mhm.
I remember
Yeah,
that.
when the gun went off, everybody just a mass. I think there was about, oh man, how many people? Was it
Ton of runners.
6,000 people? Was it more?
Yeah, something like it's like I know we looked it up, and I can't remember something. It's like 5 to 8,000, something like that. It was just a mass of people though. It's just a sea of people right in front of us the whole way.
Yeah, and I would say
Um,
those first 3 to 4 miles, we came out a little bit hotter than maybe we needed to. So, kind of stepping through the race from mile 0 to 4, we were weaving through a lot of people, and
yeah.
we were pushing at an 8:30 pace, I would say, until about mile 16. But the first four, weaving in and out of people, then found our groove. And eventually, for those that don't know, the race goes around White Rock Lake, which is northeast of downtown Dallas. And this is where the
Hmm.
majority of Richard and I did our training. So
Yeah.
it was really nice to have a familiar location of, hey, I know exactly where I'm at. I'm familiar with this terrain. I know where the hills are. I know where the downhills are. So it's good to have at least some familiar territory. Like if you're going to do a race, I would definitely at least walk a portion of it or drive a portion of it so you know what to expect or look at the elevation profile of the race itself. That'll definitely help
Yeah.
in terms of your. So mile, oh man, 9, like you had said, stop for a little bit, use a porta
Yep.
potty. I was just jogging in place, and a bunch of runners were going by. People were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Just waiting for my buddy." So
Yep. Yep.
got through
We only
that.
lost
No,
like 2 minutes, so it's all right. It was pretty
yeah, we
quick.
didn't lose too much time, which was nice. And I would say we got to the half marathon marker, and that's where, let's say, what was it? Maybe it was 9 or 10 to where the half marathon people split off.
Yep.
So it's like,
Yeah. It was
okay,
some. It wasn't exactly. It was somewhere before White Rock Lake, I think,
mm-hmm.
which made it less crowded for sure.
Yeah, which was nice. So the people
Yeah.
that were doing the half marathon turned off, and then it was only the marathoners going on from there. So really kind of focused on getting our nutrition right, stay hydrated with
Hmm.
G1M, and using the goos every 45 minutes or 4.5 miles, kind of what they tell you to do. So
Yep.
follow those. And then going from there, I would say mile 16 is kind of where my body started feeling it a little bit, at least in my hamstrings. Um,
Yep.
I don't know if you felt the same way, if you ever had full body aches and or cramps. Mile 18, 19, 20 is kind of where the full body cramps set in for me, even following that nutrition plan.
Yep. No, I mean, that's kind of the 18th mile is the name of this as well. I named it because of
Mm-hmm.
that. I remember like we were at at White Rock Lake. We were at that section where we were almost hitting the main road again, and I remember you saying you started getting cramps, and then as soon as we hit that uphill coming out of White Rock Lake, which is around mile 18 or 20, if I remember right, like same thing. My quads and my hamstring on my right leg was just shot, and I had to walk and try and keep on moving and try and keep them loose. Um, but I just remember the first 13 miles, like you said, 8, 20, 25, 30 pace. We honestly doing really well, and that was way ahead of what we needed, which is like a 907. And just it felt like we'd be able to cruise home and have no issues at all. And then we both at mile 16 to 20 just experienced that pain of, in a way, I knew that my body would be able to handle it, but it was just convincing myself that I was able to keep pushing because we got to the top of the hill,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then I was just cramping. I'd run a bit, and then I'd kind of have to change my style of running, not to flex, to try and use different muscle groups as well. And then luckily, I ran into some other guy who had a BPN hat on actually, and so that's kind of I don't know if what I said. I said something about his hat or go on more or something like that, and he was also going for a sub four. So we kind of ran together for the next 2 to 3 miles, and just taking my mind off things helped a lot. But yeah, those it's hard to explain because it's not like the cramps and stuff immobilize you. I'm sure some people are immobilized, whereas they have to wait for a few minutes. But it was more of like just forcing yourself to keep on moving. That helped me the most because I feel like if I stood still, and I don't know if you could relate, if you stand still, I feel like it just gets worse because you're cooling down, your muscles are cramping up even more, and like the only way I kind of got through it is just by keep on moving and keep on running in a way. Did you get that?
Yeah, I felt the same way. I think we separated about mile 18, 19, 20, somewhere in that range. And I think you
Mm-hmm.
were moving on. And I think that hill slowed me down a little bit, like my pace dropped. So trying to, again, not walk because I knew if I walked, my body's just going to feel the cramps more. I'm going to want to stop, walk, and that's not going to help me get to the sub four. So basically just
Mm-hmm.
keeping one foot in front of the other, just constant, hey, I need to jog a little bit and finding a good group of people that were in the same boat as me of like, hey, we have this goal, we're going to get there. We're not going to do it as quickly as maybe we set out to do in terms of the first 13 miles, which we did come out of the gate a little bit hot, but
Yeah,
race day excitement and jitters, and there's tons of people for the Dallas
crowds
Marathon for
just
those that go.
cheering. Yeah.
There's a lot of crowds, and there's the psychos that have the folding tables with bottles of Jameson, Fireball, and people are stopping to take shots and all kinds of things. So definitely a cool environment that I would urge people to at least check out one time in their life. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, hitting that all of mile 16 to 20 and just knowing like, hey, I need to put one foot in front of the other, cannot walk, cannot slow down, need to get there. That was one of the main things for me as well. And at that point,
Yeah.
I almost abandoned the nutrition plan a little bit, like was still taking my goos. But man,
Yeah.
after mile 22, I was like, I just need whatever I can get in my system. And the goos, every time I would have one, I'm like, all right, this is not working. And
Didn't help.
another thing I would
Uh.
do differently going back into this is I would use some caffeinated and some non-caffeinated goos because I think I only used caffeinated goos. And at that point, I was taking in like 500 milligrams plus of caffeine. And my body was like, I don't know how to digest this anymore. I don't know what you want me to do with this. So I would definitely urge people to figure out consistently whenever you're training, you use
Mm.
goos that are non, some that are caffeinated, figure out which ones you like, which ones fit well with your stomach, because some of them will upset your stomach and just clear it out really quick. So you need to
Yep.
be careful with that and just have that on your mind. So that's another thing that I would do differently.
Yep.
But going in through mile, I don't know, 20 and towards the end, I was just picking up Gatorade. I was picking up water. Like I don't think I ever
Same.
had to
Yeah.
eat Red Bull, but there were a bunch of different things that I was like, all right, I need this at every single aid station, just trying to get to the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. Because I think I finished by G1M. The first 13 miles, we timed it out perfectly in terms of G1M and Goose because
Mm-hmm.
I had just finished mine as soon as we got to Carl and Rachel and Chloe and them at the midway point to switch out a
Mm-hmm.
second bottle. Um, and then the second 13 mile, I think I finished mine like mile 20 or 21. So as soon as I started struggling, I just started drinking way more than I did in the first 13.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
same as soon at mile 22, I stopped taking goose as well because I was just I think I had one left or something, but I was just sick of it. I was just tired of it, so it's just I had some Gatorade and some water, and that was the only thing. I think our nutrition was good. Besides, maybe just we didn't factor in that if you're really tired or that we'd run through the stuff a lot more than we expected. But I think for the first
Mm-hmm.
18 or so miles, we were doing well. Um, and then, but I'm sure that's something that a lot of people have experienced as well in terms of you're going to have a very tough time in the last 6 miles of a marathon unless you're the dude from Kenya who just broke the world record and says he's never struggled in one before. Um, but
Yeah.
I think it's just part and parcel of it. And I think like the thing that surprised me the most was the next day because like during the day we raced, we finished, and then we met up later that day for some food, and we weren't walking comfortably, but we weren't like dead in a sense. But as soon as that next day when we woke up, I couldn't walk, and I know you said you had the same experience, and that was the one thing that no one ever talked about before, or I never
Yeah,
saw anyone talk about. Is like you're probably not going to be able to walk. I don't know if it's just us not preparing more or stretching enough, but that was like the biggest shocker for me is not being able to move properly the next day.
I think that's true for most people. That since I did the marathon, a bunch of my friends have done them, and that's one thing I tell them, like, hey, you don't plan anything, because originally, again,
Hmm.
my sister and her boyfriend from Massachusetts, they were in town. We're like, oh yeah, on Monday we can go and maybe go to brunch and get some drinks and day drink and bounce around. Maybe go check out the Natural History Museum. We did none of that. We woke up on that Monday. Luckily, I took work off. We were at the Airbnb. Woke up and I was like, damn, I cannot put my legs off the side of the bed right now without.
Hmm.
So forced myself to get up and immediately just stretched out, tried to get some blood flow back in my legs. And then I noticed my toe. So I had two huge blood blisters on my left foot. One was on the left or right side of my big toe, and then one was on my, I'll call it my index toe. And it was just a
Hmm.
big blood blister on top of it. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But that was definitely a huge shock for me. I was like, damn, I did not anticipate not being able to just walk around and get around normally for probably 2 or 3 days. And then I would say a week
Hmm.
after, I didn't run for about a month after the marathon, just because I looked it up online. A lot of people say, hey, your body's not going to be fully back to 100% until about a month post race. So just take it
Yep.
easy on your body, recover, make sure you're hydrating, taking the proper nutrition just to revitalize your system. So that was definitely a
Hmm.
huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. If you want to, I don't know if you want to talk about your toes, but I know your one toe was. You sent me a picture. It was just. It was gnarly, man. It was pretty disgusting.
It was a huge trauma on my left index toe, and I went back to my, again, was living with my aunt and uncle, so I went back to their house, hung out, and then my aunt and uncle saw my toe and they're like, hey, you need to go to the foot doctor. So went to their foot doctor, and
Hmm.
originally I was like, okay, I'll have him look at it, whatever, maybe clean it up. And I'm laying there on the table. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's really bad. Super nice guy." He was like, "We're gonna have to take care of that." And I was thinking, "Okay, cool. Like I'll come back in 2 or 3 days." And next thing I know, I turn around, and he's walking in with a little silver tray with like a scalpel and like all kinds of gauze and everything. I'm like, "Oh, we're doing this right now." So he basically just did some local anesthetic and then
Hmm.
cut it open, and the blood kind of squirt everywhere. It was pretty gross, but he essentially
Yeah.
removed all the skin, wrapped it up, put some antibiotic on it, and then I couldn't really wear a normal shoe on my left foot for like a week because it was wrapped up. And he said, "Hey, we want
Hmm.
this to be in fresh air when you can. When you're at home, take off the goggles when you're out. We don't want any dirt or anything in it, so just make sure that it's wrapped up whenever you're at work and stuff." So I wore a slide to work for about a week just to let my toe and my foot kind of rest up and heal
Yeah.
itself over. But that was another thing that I did not anticipate. Like lost my entire toenail on that toe, so that was,
Hmm.
I think, the second time in my life that I lost a toenail. So that was
Was that
definitely,
because of the was that because of the race? Because you never had any issues during like training, right?
never had any issues during training.
Yeah.
I think there was a little bit of fungus buildup on that toe, so
Okay.
that could have maybe supported just the blood blister and maybe the actual concaving of my toenail itself. So that was definitely
Hmm.
something to think about. Of like, hey, take care of your feet whenever you're doing a training for a marathon or training for any kind of endurance race, because those are the only two things that are going to get you through it. So really, need to take
Yeah.
care of your feet. Proper care is huge going forward. That's another lesson learned, I would say.
Yeah. That was something I talked about in a second episode I'm probably going to release tomorrow. Is one of the things I didn't realize that I need to do as much. And you mentioned to me you bought these little sets of balls you roll your feet out, and that was the biggest game changer for me. Especially on the outside halves of my feet, because like I kind of impact in from outside in, which I think a lot of people do, and just
Mm-hmm.
being able to roll those out and roll out the balls of my feet was such a big, almost an advantage. Because if I didn't do that, I think I would have had a lot more injuries and had to miss a lot more trainings.
Yeah, and just a lot more general pain on the underside of your foot. And stretching
Hmm.
out every single night for at least 30 minutes was huge. Stretching out your calves, hamstrings, quads,
Yeah.
stretching your feet out. stretching your back and your shoulders out because you have to carry the above your torso or above your waistline weight too throughout running. So like your shoulders, my shoulders were sore after the marathon and after longer runs. They would just my
Hmm.
back, everything would get sore. So basically roll out everything you can for about 30 minutes a day whenever you're doing the training as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we were lucky in the sense that besides some like knee pain here and there, and like you had some of the Achilles pain, we didn't really have any injuries. Um, I was sick for a week. I don't think he was sick at all. He didn't really miss any time because of yeah. He took some time off because of your Achilles, I think. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we did that. We either got a little. I think there's a little bit of luck in it because I think that's a factor. But also we did pretty well with that, like the stretching and then rolling out and using the massage gun. You know, which is another. It's
Yeah,
a. I'm glad we did that right, and we didn't have to learn that lesson the hard way.
agreed. I
Because
think
I
we were
think
very lucky
yeah,
in terms of avoiding injuries and illness. I think you had COVID for a week or so.
yeah, yeah, and that just which sucked, but you know, I tried to run the one day and my heart rate was like 175 at a 10-minute a mile pace, and I was like, I should probably just chill it out now and just rest.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's another big thing of you're going through this training and you get kind of an idea of, okay, my heart rate needs to be at this for lower intensity runs. Like my heart rate would be at 128 to like 135 for my 3 to 4 mile runs that are super chill. And then tempo runs,
mm-hmm.
they would be anywhere from like 145 to 160 at the higher end. And I think
Yep.
you can just see over time that that wasn't at the start. At the start, maybe my heart rate was at 175 for those tempo runs. Okay, well, you got a lot of cardio fitness in for 2, 3 months, and your heart, obviously, its health improved because you're not
Mm-hmm.
operating strictly in terms of your heart's working super hard. So it's
Mm-hmm.
easier for the body to kind of, okay, hey, here's the oxygen, here's the nutrients. I can suffice with just this. I can still pump out a good result for you. So definitely
Right.
notice that over time and you get a good idea of where your heart rate is supposed to be. And that's huge. Like if you're sick and you know, oh man, for these normal runs, my heart rate should be in the 130, 140 range, and it's all the way at 170. That's not normal. Something else is going on. So it's definitely a
Right.
big thing too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big. You kind of, especially with us, with the you had the Apple Watch and I had the Garmin. You kind of look at all these health metrics that normally you wouldn't be paying attention. Like if we're just
Yeah.
casually training, like now I pay more attention to it just because I'm trying to amp up my running again. But just in casual training, like before the marathon, I wasn't paying attention to any of that. And because we didn't run enough or train enough to have a baseline, so you kind of get in tune more with your body, I think. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to touch, I guess, you did a half Ironman recently, and how did
Mhm.
that? I want to know how that compared to the actual marathon in kind of like two ways. The one way is was the actual training harder, and was if it was harder, was it more hard into like more difficult in terms of like actual physical training, or was managing the training because it's all different disciplines? It's not just like running, for example. So managing your time in terms of that, and then the actual event, was it harder than the marathon? Um, and then again, it could be harder because it's 7 to 8 hours long instead of a marathon that's 4 hours. You know. So
Yeah.
just your thoughts on that.
So I guess I did half Ironman, Tempe half Ironman in October 21st with
Mm-hmm.
one of my coworkers. So we kind of started our training. He's relatively fit. He's about 31. So he actually turns 32 today. So he had done a bunch of running and maybe Spartan races, stuff like that, tough mudders. He's done a
Mm-hmm.
lot of rides like Hotter Than Hell, which is a 100-mile bike race in Wichita Falls in
Mm-hmm.
Texas. So his biking atmosphere or his biking history was on par with what he needed for the half Ironman, and then obviously doing the marathon. My running was in a good spot, so the only thing that neither of us had really dove into previously is swimming. So our training program, we followed one. I say we followed one, but I would say we followed it loosely because
Mm-hmm.
obviously the schedule I will say is a lot more challenging dependent upon weather. Like we trained from June through October. So
Right.
it's a little bit hotter in Texas. So trying to get out and do longer runs in the middle of summer, trying to get out and go on longer bike rides, like 30, 40-mile bike rides in the dead of summer. It's a little bit more challenging. You really need to get out there in the early morning or late at night. Even
Mm-hmm.
at night, it's going to be 95 degrees outside. So nutrition
Yep.
is going to be huge. Making sure everything's replenished is going to be huge. So you don't obviously pass out on one of those rides or runs or
Mm-hmm.
have any other, just your body can't take it anymore. Like your just muscles will break down over time. So the training was a little bit looser, I will say, but the general schedule that I followed would be uh, two swims, and that would be on Monday nights. I would go to a natatorium that's close to my office, and I would do about 2,000 yard swim in about,
Mm-hmm.
I think I did it in 35 minutes was my fastest, but I would do that anywhere from 35 to 50 minutes, and then go home, have dinner, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, I would either bike or run depending on weather, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I would say bike or run, at least do something on one of those days, or try to fit in a lift and just keep the condition training as well.
Right. Yeah.
Fridays, we did open water swims just in local lakes, and we try to do about 2 miles was the baseline. We did shorter ones at faster paces. We did longer ones at slower paces with maybe a break in between just to get our bodies used to swimming 1.2 miles, which is the actual length for the race. So doing, I think, a 2.6 mile swim was my longest, and we had a break in between and just basically stopped, hydrated a little bit, got back in the water. And then after all those open water swims, we would tread water for about 10 to 15 minutes. And
To
one
keep
of the
your
things that I
like
would
for
urge people,
what? Your legs? Sorry. Was that for
yeah,
your leg
just for
strength?
extra
Okay.
to stretch it out and then just basically get used to being in the water while you're super tired. So,
All right, that makes sense.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
after the swim, you got to get on the bike and you're going to be exhausted. So,
Mm-hmm.
doing that, and we did a little bit of block training too. Like we would do a mile swim and then go for a 4 or 5 or 6 mile run, or we would do a mile swim and then go for a 15, 20-mile bike ride. Obviously, depending on the day, the weather, if it's super hot outside, we'd be a little bit more cautious of like, hey, are we going to burn ourselves out? What's the temperature? Are we going to get super sunburned, not be able to train this weekend? There's a lot of things to keep in mind. One thing I would urge people to do is get your wetsuit as early as possible and maybe get a
Yeah.
tri-suit as well. Have a Roka tri-suit. And that's what I used for a Olympic length try that I did in September. And then
Mm-hmm.
wetsuit was huge because the buoyancy of the wetsuit is just, it makes everything seem so much easier. Obviously, you're a little bit more aerodynamic. You're able to stay on top of the water. You have less drag, so you're able to move quicker.
Right.
Another thing I'd say to get is there's we could do a whole episode on gear, but another thing I would say to
Mm-hmm.
get is buoyancy shorts. So it keeps your butt elevated in the water a little bit more. So I would use the buoyancy
Right.
shorts whenever I'm in the pool, just so I can focus on extending my arms and getting everything right in terms of my technique. Because I know that's going to be the first thing that goes. If you're tired, your technique is
Yeah.
going to go right out the window.
Yeah.
So really
Yeah.
needed to focus on that. But my Saturday and Sunday schedule, I guess going back into the schedule a little bit and trying to stay on topic here.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday and Sunday would either be a long run or be a long bike. Obviously, depending
Okay.
on what I have on that weekend with social adventures and stuff like that, it kind of would depend on that. But I would try to get a 20, 25, 30-mile bike ride or a 10 to 12-mile run, similar to what we're going to have the day of with the half Ironman of a half marathon. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the outlook on training that I had. I think following a more direct training schedule is what I'll do next time because I do want to do another half Ironman. It was a lot of fun. Definitely a good
Yep.
time. But
Would that be
uh,
in 2024? Have you seen anything?
probably I'm throwing a few things around right now, whether it's the OKC marathon in April or
Okay.
doing half Ironman in April or May. Kind of just depends on scheduling and other things that I have going on. But that's the
Yeah.
goal. That's the goal right now. I've got to plan something out because again, having no race in mind, don't really have any drive
Yeah.
to go out and push myself to do long bike rides or longer runs or go jump in the pool and get a few laps in. So definitely need to have a race on the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. That's why I I'll start my training for Vienna in I think it's like 2 weeks now.
Yeah,
Last day of 31st. Yeah, I'll start that just because I have to do something, man. And that'll be mid-April as well. So staying busy. And so going back to the actual Ironman, how was the actual race day? Was that similar to the marathon in terms of excitement, big crowds, getting ready in the morning and then hitting the race day, or was it a little bit different in that sense?
I would say it's a little bit different because it's a whole weekend adventure. Like we got to our Airbnb on Thursday night. Well, I guess
Mm-hmm.
Friday morning really early. We basically drove from Dallas to Tempe from 8 p.m. Thursday night through noon/1 o'clock on Friday, and just hang out, go to the Airbnb, got in the pool, got our
Mm-hmm.
stuff set up, took it easy. Obviously, again, learning something from the marathon, I was like, oh man, I need to carb up days in advance. So I started
Right.
carbing, I would say, the Wednesday before the race. So carbed up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The race is on Sunday morning, and was really able to gain a lot from that in terms of just general calorie intake and not having to force myself to eat as much whenever I was on the bike or running. So that Friday, again, just hung out, got all of our gear set up. Okay, this is what I need. This is what I need today. This is what I need on my bike. Saturday was the bike drop off. And I would give a lot of credit to Ironman themselves just because they have a tight group over there. It, like everything was
Mm-hmm.
super easy. You go in, get your bib, you get your bag. They have a whole Ironman shop that you can go check out. They have a bunch of different vendors for goos and shoes, and they have like a bike shop will come to the actual event, and if you have anything wrong with your
Mm-hmm.
bike, you can get it checked out, you can get it lubed up, you can get it just tuned up, whatever you really need to do.
Right.
So going through that, Saturday was the bike drop off, and basically you don't leave anything on your bike. Like I didn't leave my water bottles or anything, it's just the bike itself. And there's
Mm-hmm.
about again 1,300 competitors in that event, so there was a lot of buzz on Saturday when people were dropping their bikes off. And one thing I will say that I heard about is make sure you release some air in your tires, because with it being 100 something degrees in Tempe, okay, if you pump your tires up to 80, 85 psi, whatever your tires
Gonna go
call for,
higher.
it's
Yeah.
going to go higher with the increased temperatures of the day, and it could pop. Like there were a few tire
Right.
pops that happened on Saturday before the race, and the worst thing that could happen is you show up on Sunday morning, you're like, all right, I'm ready for this race, and you have a pop tire. That would really,
Right.
really not start the day off well. So I released
Yeah.
a little bit of air and just brought a electronic pump on Sunday and just
Mm-hmm.
pumped everything on that morning.
Right.
But yeah, Saturday was super nice, nothing too crazy. Definitely got a good night's sleep. I didn't feel as nervous going into the half Ironman as I did the marathon, just because I did, again, an Olympic triathlon in September. So it was a little bit easier to understand, hey, this is the expectation, where I'd never done a marathon or half marathon before formally.
Yep.
Oh
Yep.
man, I don't know what this is going to be like. But
Mm-hmm.
having a good crowd of people around was huge for that Olympic try in September. Like, I didn't know anything. So that was really nice to at least dip my toe in the water a little bit there and get used to the scheduling and everything. That way, Sunday morning, whenever that time came
Mm-hmm.
for that half Ironman, I didn't feel as nervous. So we got there at about 5, I would say, because the race started at, this is the weird thing. There's 1,300 people, and they say the race starts
Mm-hmm.
at 6:40. We didn't get in the water. Like me and Christopher, my coworker that I did it with,
Right.
we didn't get in the water until about 7:20, and we started right next to each other, and it was weird. Like got there at 5, got my bike set up, got everything laid out on a towel underneath my bike, and just got all my goos set up for the run, got all my nutrition set up for the bike, got my shoes laid out, got my helmet laid out, glasses, gloves, all the stuff that you need for the actual event.
Mm-hmm.
Put my wetsuit on, and underneath it, I had bike shorts on. And then get your swim cap on, get your goggles on, and then you go wait in line with all the other competitors. And again, we
Mm-hmm.
got there at 6:40, and we were waiting in line until about 7:20. So I had about 40 minutes where we were just kind of jumping around, trying to stay loose, trying to wait for other people to get in the water. And at this point, the sun is rising, so it's it was a really cool environment because it's right in a river, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a dam river, so there was no active flow going one way or another. So it was super easy to jump in. And I will say, That's like the realest moment is you jump in the water. It's okay. We're doing this. So feet are in the water.
Yeah.
Say it was easy to follow the buoys that they had set up, and it's kind of sad. Like a few people within the first 200-300 meters, I don't know what happened to them, but there would be a jet ski that would go pick them up and then come back to the start, and their race was over. Again, I don't know exactly what happened with those people, but it was a little bit sad to
Maybe.
see. So
Yeah.
I knew like I'm not. That's not going to happen to me. I'm going to freaking do this thing. So going through the swim, getting to the halfway point where you have an actual turnaround because it's just one big loop. That was
Mm-hmm.
kind of one of the surrealist moments for me because you look out and the sun's rising, same height as the water level, and you're looking out and you're just stroke by stroke. It's unreal. It was
Looking at
just
the
a beautiful,
sunrise. Yeah.
beautiful scenery. So get around that turn and then just home stretch for the swim. Probably 85% of the way through the swim, I was like, all right, I'm ready to do something different. Like, let me get on this bike. Let me start cranking the wheels. Let's go. So
Yeah.
got out and basically just stripped the wetsuit. And they have people that are there too, to just strip the wetsuit, get everything off. Did the swim in about 45 minutes, which was pretty good. That's what I was targeting. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
to where my bike was, dried off a little bit, double checked I had all my goos where they needed to be. Uh, Obviously, got the wetsuit off, dried off my feet, socks, shoes, bike jersey, helmet, goggles, glasses, everything. Just got everything on and set out on the bike. And I think the bike was probably the hardest for me because
Okay.
85% of the way through it and my legs were struggling. Like
Right.
I probably the
Was it
least
up
amount
in?
of.
Was it a lot of hills, or was it flattish?
There was some hills, but it was relatively flat, so the difficulty for it wasn't that hard. I think the biking is where I underestimated the race the most and
Okay.
need to spend more time just on the bike itself.
Right.
So I did the bike in about 4 hours, and similar to the marathon, like you have so much nutrition on your bike. Like I had two water bottles with G1M in it, and then I had
Mm-hmm.
the G1M non-caffeinated goos, and then I also had
Mm-hmm.
caffeinated goos. So doing that,
Right.
offsetting each one was perfect. That's why, again, going to future marathons, I'll have some
You tried
caffeinated,
that.
some uncaffeinated. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then being done with the bike, again, 85% of the way through the bike, I'm like, all right, let me get on my feet. Let me just nail this run.
Mm-hmm.
The bike was, again, probably my worst out of it. Got off the bike and your legs are gassed at that point. You're like, I
Probably just
have no,
jelly at that point. Yeah.
yeah, you have no idea. Like, there's no way I'm running a half marathon right now. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have bike cleats at this time, so I already had my shoes on. Basically, just swapped out my shirt, put on my bib belt, put on my hat. I had the same
Yep.
glasses, my goose, got my water bottle, and set out.
Mm-hmm.
And the first, I would say, 9 miles, I was running at a good clip, and then at that point, it kind of all just went to hell. Like my body was just kind of
Yeah.
breaking down. For the marathon, I was able to push through those cramps in mile 18 and on, those full body cramps. I, for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason, pushed through. So I had to walk the last four, unfortunately. But dude,
Could that be because you were actually using your full body for this race? Like the marathon, you're just running. But like for
yeah,
this
that
one, you actually had to swim and then bike and then after all that, still run.
it could be just total body exhaustion at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I will say going forward. I want to be able to at least do another half Ironman and do the whole thing without stopping or slowing
Yeah.
down or walking at all. Like I want to be able to actually finish it. So I think that impacted my time a good amount. I did it in 8 hours, but dude, that full
That's
body
still good for the
exhaustion.
first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, I can
Overall,
join you on the next one. I was supposed to. I was well, like I was supposed to do that one as well, but life got in the way a little bit.
yeah. But I will say the half Ironman was probably more fun than the marathon, just in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the build up and the folks that you're around and being able to do multiple things and not just running. I think it was a
Yeah.
little bit more enjoyable. I think the marathon is more challenging than the half Ironman, in my opinion.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
at
Is
least
it because you
from.
think we had a well? Because it's very the same monotone, so you have to kind of get used to that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say. I mean, that kind of makes sense. I feel like because you're just running, and so at least with the Ironman, obviously I haven't done one yet, but I just know from in general when I'm training, I enjoy it a lot more if I'm mixing things up. Like if I'm lifting and then maybe running a little bit or do whatever else I'm doing. So if you can like bike and swim and then maybe run a little bit, instead of just 3 miles, 4 miles, tempo runs, and just the same thing over and over again, you know?
Yeah, but it was really enjoyable. I'll probably do it again, if not multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, might as well. You keep on getting, because what, which, if you had to do it again, would you try and do like a 7:30 or a 7 hour time? Would you try and improve on that? Or would your goal, like you
Probably
said, just be not stop, non stopping?
it would probably be a 6:30 was probably my goal for next time.
Okay. Yeah. Is that like, I haven't looked at any half Ironman time. Is that like a pretty, like, is that like the equivalent of a sub 4 hour marathon? Or what is
Uh,
that?
I think a sub four would probably be sub six
Okay.
because swim. I think I was in a good spot with 45-minute swim. The bike
Mm
is probably where I lost a lot of time, and then the run. I think I did the run in about 3 hours and 20 minutes. So if I could do the run in two and a half, okay, well there's 50 minutes itself, and then
hmm.
if
Right.
I could decrease my bike time by an hour and a half because I did it about 13.5 miles per hour. If I can do it at 15 miles an hour, you gain a lot more time back just in the bike itself. So shaving
And,
an
right.
hour off the bike and shaving 50 minutes off of the run, then baking a little bit of leeway in there for weather or cramps or anything else. Your transition time is huge as well. Like my
Mm
transition time from swim to bike was about 8 minutes, and then my transition time from bike to run was about three. So that's
hmm. Okay.
pretty quick in the world of
Yeah.
tries. Again, I didn't
Yeah.
have bike boots at that time, so really I just had to take off my bike jersey, shirt, hat, and gone for the run.
Just
So
keep on going. Yeah.
yeah, it
So
was
you think
easy.
the biking is where you get the most? Because I know, I mean, we both. Well, I know Chris through you, and he's a big biker. Do you think that kind of gives you a big advantage? Because it's a chunk of the distance throughout the whole race, right? Like it's 50, what 54, 55 miles of a half Ironman, and a full Ironman's like 112 miles.
Yeah, it's
So it's like,
a
yeah.
big chunk of the race. I would say it maybe gave him a little bit of advantage, but again, it's not a competition. It's a competition with yourself. So you
Well,
got to
that's
set
what
your goal.
not like advantage for in terms of him beating you, but like you trying to improve your time. Biking is where,
Mhm.
irrespective of your, I guess it would matter where you currently are, but like just in general, it's probably like one area of focus to really improve on, right? Because of that large
Yeah,
percentage.
that would be the
But
main
yeah,
goal now.
yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully the next one you get that 6:30, and then what would you, if you had to do the OKC marathon, what would your next time be? Do you think? What do you think you'd push yourself at?
In April, I'd like to target a 3:30,
Okay.
which I think is doable based on having to stop at mile 9 and let you relieve yourself. I think we got a little bit of time to
Yep.
catch back up on there. Probably give me 10 minutes or so. So 3:42. I think I ended the marathon with 3:52. So
Mm-hmm.
3:42 and then make up 12 minutes just by increasing pace for mile
Just training. Yeah.
14 through 16.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, and I know I've heard OKC's fun, so I think you'd be able to. I know it's a pretty
Mm-hmm.
decent crowd that goes to that one, so that'd also help. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, man. Thank you for sharing, and it was fun to just chat through the whole Dallas thing and kind of brought back that just memories that I usually never we don't really think about. At least I don't think about that stuff too much. And you mentioned stuff that I had forgotten already from that race, and just to me it felt like a blur. There was like 16 weeks
Yeah.
of training, everything just kind of mushed together into one, and then race day was a blur from the start, and then a painful blur at the end, and so it just all kind of meshed together, you know. But
It's a
yeah,
fun time, man. We'll do it again.
yeah. We will once you hopefully next time you get we'll chat maybe about if you're doing the race, we can chat about how that's going in terms of because we'll both be training for something in April. Then we can chat about how that's going, how maybe doing a harder training is how it's different from last time, or how we've implemented some of the stuff we learned in the last time. So I'll be looking forward to that. All right, man.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you.
Same. Appreciate it.